Yavanartha Udapane Sarvata Samplutodake Sarvantaveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavanartha Udapane Sarvatak Samplutodake Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha Yavan. All that Artha is meant. Udapane, in a well of water. Sarvataha, in all respects. Samplutta udake, in a great reservoir of water. Tavan, similarly. Sarveshu, in all. Vedeshu, Vedic literatures. Brahmanasya, the man who knows the Supreme Brahman. Vijanataha, who is in complete knowledge. Translation. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedas, Vedic literature, are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15:15. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15:7. The living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:33-7 as follows. Aho bhata swapachoto garyan yajjiva gre vartate namatubhyam te pustapas te jahu shashna arya brahmanuchora nama grinanti yete. O my Lord, a person who is chanting the holy name, although born of a low family, like that of a chandala, dog-eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals, and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals, nor is it possible to study all of the Vedanta and the Upanishads thoroughly. It requires much time, energy, and knowledge and resources to execute the purposes of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of the Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting the holy names of the Lord, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of all fallen souls. When Lord Krishna was asked by a great Vedantic scholar, Prakashananda Saraswati, why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist, instead of studying Vedanta philosophy, the Lord replied that his spiritual master had found him to be a great fool, and thus asked him to chant the holy name of the Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish, are not adequately educated. To understand Vedanta philosophy, the best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna. And the highest Vedantiness is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. That is the ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. Yavanartho dapane sarvata samtotodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanitaha. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Namo Vishnu Varaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Sadharane. Since this is a summarize of the entire Bhagavad Gita, which is a summarize of all the Vedic literature, we can expect that in the other parts of the Bhagavad Gita, there's going to be similar verses. Does anyone know a similar verse in another part of the Bhagavad Gita? Well, let's try at the end of the 5th chapter. Oh, that's the 5th chapter. Vedeshu jagneshu tapasu chaiva daneshu yat punya pulam pradishtam adeti tatsarvamidam viditva yogi paramstanam upaichityajam. So let's see what chapter that is. I suspect it's the 8th chapter. Person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all of these, and then he reaches the supreme eternal abode. And there's another verse, famous verse, Devarshir bhutatman rinim pritrinam yakinkaro Sharanam Sharanyam. It's a Sanskrit verse. Devarshi. I guess this is the verse is quoted. Yeah, it's Srimad Bhagavatam. But I'm just index is verse is quoted. Devarshi bhutatman rinim pritrinam. Devarshir. It's quoted page 68 and 122. It's quoted twice here. Let's try 68. Anyone who is taking shelter, Devarshir Bhutatman Rinim Putrinam, the King Kuro Nayam Rinitu Rajan, Sarvatma Yaksharnam Sharanyam, Gato Mukundam Parityakartam. Anyone who is taking shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically filled by the performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one may question, because after all, if you're performing sacrifice, you study the Vedas, you do all these different things, generally people are looking for some results, like fame, adoration, distinction, money, whatever. So how is it that simply by chanting Hare Krishna, all the purpose of the Vedas are fulfilled? After all, the Vedas are supposed to be Nigama Kalpatura Galitam Palam, Sukhamukam Dravam Samyutam Pibata Bhagavatam Alayam, Muhur Mahu Bhava Rasika Bhuvikaha, Nigama Kalpatura Galitam Palam. That the Vedas are the desire tree. You can just get whatever you want from the Vedas. As a matter of fact, we read Srimad Bhagavatam, at the end of many chapters it says, if you read this chapter, then you'll defeat all your enemies, you'll become rich and famous, you'll live forever, etc. So it seems like you're going to get some kind of material reward for reading these things. And indeed, if that's what one is looking for, because Krishna says, Ye yatamam prapadante, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. So as one becomes purified, then one becomes what we call pious. Pious means by chanting Hare Krišna or by performing the Vedic rituals, one becomes purified of the lower modes of nature, and therefore one becomes eligible to get a higher status of material life, and eventually when one becomes Krishna conscious, actually aware of Krishna, then the desire for material sense gratification diminishes, because one feels Swami Kritarto Varam Na Vache. When Dhruva Maharaj met Lord Vishnu personally, he saw him face to face, then he was overwhelmed with happiness and love. And therefore there's nothing more that he wanted. He said, even getting a kingdom greater than that of my great-grandfather seems to me like getting broken pieces of glass, because now I've gotten a diamond like you. Now that's our theory, because we don't have Krishna yet. But at least we have an example of a great personality, Dhruva Maharaj, who underwent great austerity according to the Bhagavatam, if we believe in the Bhagavatam. He only ate kapita fruit every third day for the first month. Then he only ate leaves that fell from the tree every 6 days. Then he only drank a little water every 9th day. And then he only took a breath every 12th day. So that's quite austere. Then he stopped breathing. Then he stood on one leg. And then finally he saw Vishnu. That's all he wanted. Although Krishna also gave him a planet, the pole star, which is greater than that of Lord Brahma's planet. But all he wanted was Krishna. So at least theoretically we can understand that from his testimony at least, that Krishna is so beautiful, he's so powerful, he's so intelligent, he's so famous, he's so everything. He's so renounced, he's so beautiful, he's so loving, he's so pleasurable to be with, that one doesn't want anything else. And if one doesn't want anything else, then his desires are fulfilled. Just like if we're hungry and we eat an apple, then our hunger is fulfilled. And we feel good, because my hunger is fulfilled. But if we have no desire, then you always feel good, because there's nothing to feel bad about. There's no lacking. In Brahman, there's nothing to do, but people stay there for a long time because they're completely satisfied. There's no demands on them. And in other words, it's peaceful. There's nothing to worry about. There's no demands. One is simply situated in bliss. So similarly, the path of devotional service gradually frees one from desires and changes our desire from material to spiritual. For instance, the highest state of consciousness in the material world is said to be achieved in Satyuga, Krite Tadayato Vishnum, that in Satyuga everyone could just meditate on Krishna and actually experience him with one's transcendental senses. And therefore, there was no need for anything else. There was no industry, there were no cars, there was no internet, no one wanted these things. There wasn't even manufacturing of weapons. Generally speaking, people had a cow, the farmers had a cow, and they had a little land, and that's all they wanted. And everyone was engaged in religious principles. And the sages like Kardama Muni would simply sit in their ashram and meditate on Krishna, and they were completely happy, remembering Krishna and his pastimes. Or at least, I guess Kardama Muni was meditating on the super soul within his heart. But he was overwhelmed with happiness by doing so. But when people became greedy, a little greedy, then Treta Yuga started. And therefore they got extra things. And then in order to have a peaceful mind, they were recommended to sacrifice those things to Vishnu, utilize them in Vishnu's service. And therefore when their mind was peaceful, then they could meditate on Krishna within the heart. And when people became even lustier and greedier in Dwapara Yuga, then they were recommended to perform temple worship. And by such temple worship, they could offer sacrifice. They could sacrifice whatever possessions they have in the service of the deity, and therefore have a peaceful mind, and therefore be able to meditate on Krishna and come to the perfection of Satya Yuga. Kriteta dayato Vishnu, tretayam yajato mukai, dwarpiyam paricharyam kalota dari kirtana. And in this age that we're in, people are completely overwhelmed by lust, anger, greed, delusion. They cannot conceive of anything beyond their present material circumstances and opportunities for protection and for gain in the material world. That's all they're thinking about. If we chant Hare Krišna in such a state of agitated mind, all we hear is our agitated mind. We don't hear the holy name. Therefore, people of Sumanda Manda Matayo Banda Bhagyu Padruta. People generally are slow. They're short-lived, first of all. We're actually going to get to that verse pretty soon. Prayena apaya yusha. Shabda. Prayena apa yusha sabda. Kalavasmin yugajana. Manda sumanda matiyo. Manda bhagu padrutaha. That prayena, almost always, ayusha, their lifespan is very short. Alpa. Prayena alpa. Practically always alpa, they have alpa, ayusha, short life. Kala prayena yapa ayusha, kalavas vinyuge jana. So, prayena yapa, prayena alpa yusha shabda. Oh, people in the Shabda, in this conference. They didn't have conference calls, they really had real conferences. And kalavasmin yuge jana. So in this age of Kali, people have but short lives. Of course, we think we're going to live for a long time here, but it's not very long, really. If you haven't noticed. Manda. And people are slow. Slow for what? They're slow for doing anything, for self-realization. It's not exactly first on their list. Today I'm going to wake up and do some spiritual practice. Manda, sumanda. And even if they take the spiritual practice, generally speaking, someone's going to cheat them. You know, produce some dust. I'm God, I can produce some dust. course, if you go around to the ashrams, we have a lot of dust we can produce. And even people are not cheated, then manda sumanda mateya manda bhaga upadruta. Then they're unfortunate because their minds are always disturbed. Even they get the right teacher, the right process, they can't really take it seriously because they have too many worries. And therefore they can't really chant with a peaceful way and actually experience Krishna. Manda bhagya upadrutaha. So, the nice thing is that we can chant Hare Krishna, even if our minds are disturbed, even if we're not interested in self-realization so much, we don't have a burning desire to go back to the spiritual world, because we hardly believe there's such a thing as a spiritual world. We'll just be going back to it. Even though we don't have any qualifications, still if we chant Hare Krishna, gradually we become purified, we become qualified. And the qualification is, for instance, that one realizes that actually I don't really need as many things as I thought I did. And therefore one becomes pacified without anxiety over gain and loss, because generally speaking, what is that famous verse in the Nectar of Instruction about collecting too much? Atyahara priyasascha prajalpa niyamagraha janas. Okay. Yes, that's right. Vinashiti, destroyed. So it all begins with atyahara. What does atyahara mean? Atyahara? What's that? Overeating. So that's why I said in the first fall down in Satya Yuga, people had controlled senses in Satya Yuga. But they fell down by wanting to eat a little bit extra. Maybe some sage came up with the idea of a Sunday feast. That was the beginning of Treta Yuga. He said, what about a pizza party? Celebrate our 100,000 years of Satya Yuga, we'll have a big pizza party. And then immediately Treta Yuga began. Because people decide to eat a little bit extra. And what happens when you want to eat a little extra or collect a little extra? Then priyasas. Yes, you have to start working. Got to do something. Because someone has to make the pizza. Someone has to. It's another thing to add on to the meditation. And then from priyasas, then you have to talk about, where to get the money, where to get the ingredients, what's the best bargain, whether you use mozzarella cheese or just curd. So much topics go on. And then from priyasas comes niyamagraha. Then people don't have time to read Prabhupada's books. They have no time to even follow the principles. They're overwhelmed by all the projects they have. So ultimately they can get something good to eat. And so either they don't follow the rules or regulations, niyamagraha means they don't follow, or they follow them, but they don't understand why they're following them. They just follow them blindly. And then jana sangas, then they become attached to worldly association, because people in the world and outside, they're much more expert in these things than we are. And then loyam, you can't live without it. To the extent that nowadays, at least in some parts of the world, you can call up and they guarantee within 15 minutes the pizza will be delivered to you, or else it's free. So people risk their lives driving on their motorcycle to bring you your pizza within 15 minutes, because otherwise you'd die. They might die on the way over, but that's not so important. So it all begins with atyahara, too much overeating. And then, of course, when you overeat, then the next day you have to undereat, you have to starve. So, bogatiyak. So you get up and down like a yo-yo. Therefore, the Vedas, they regulate these activities. In other words, they regulate sense gratification, they regulate economic development in the karma kanda section. You can't just kill the goat. You got to take it up once a month into the dark place on the hill and whisper into its ear, "I love you. I'd love to eat you." No, they whisper into the goat's ear, "My dear goat, I'm going to cut your throat. But don't worry, because next lifetime or in the future I'll become a goat. You'll be able to cut my throat." And by doing that, by regulating how you eat the goat, then after a while you wonder if it's really worth the sacrifice. Eat goat burgers. Better curd burgers. You don't have to whisper into the cow's ear, "I'm going to get some curd. I'm going to get a curd burger. And next lifetime you'll get one too." It's a lot sweeter. So by karma kanda, one gradually gives up, and then one gets some reward. In other words, if one regulates his life, then he becomes healthier, he becomes stronger, he lives longer, he has a nicer relationship with people. His life becomes more pleasant, becomes more pious. There's not so many problems that one creates. And then one thinks about how to make a happier life. And one hears about the heavenly planets, like in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. You perform some sacrifice, you can go to the heavenly planets and live hundreds of times more than on this planet. And the enjoyment there, the food is fantastic. You have a stronger fire digestion, so you can eat more and you don't get sick. It sounds great. There's Nanda Kanda and forest, and everyone's happy and they dance and whatever. So then one gradually begins to perform pious activities, sacrifices, and one becomes higher and higher elevated until one realizes that the material world is problematic no matter where I am in it, and therefore one wants to merge in Brahman, where there are no problems. But if one is fortunate enough to hear about Krishna, then one finds out that in the spiritual world there's also food, but it's unlimitedly more delicious than it is here. People also play games there, but they never grow up. They play games forever. They also live in houses, but the houses are all blissful. You don't have to pay for them. There's no rent, there's no mortgage, there's no electricity. You don't have to turn because it's all luminous. The water is nectar. You don't have to buy any bottled water. Think about how much you'd save and if you went back to the spiritual world, you wouldn't have to buy any bottled water anymore. No filter, no water. And it's all blissful water. You don't have to worry about air pollution. There's no chemtrails in the spiritual world. Everything is wonderful there. So then, therefore, if we go back to spiritual consciousness even, then one is completely satisfied. And everything that we were seeking from the Vedas is automatically provided, but in an unlimitedly more blissful way. Forever. That's a long time. Every time you eat a mango in the spiritual world, it tastes unbelievably wonderful. And every time you remember eating the mango, it even tastes better. So how can you lose going back to the spiritual world? And we don't have to wait to go back to the spiritual world. Even in this body, one can be in the spiritual world if one learns how to chant offensively the holy name and perform devotional service with full devotion and enthusiasm. One can, even in this life, even right now, we can be at least in a spiritual consciousness. We may not reach perfection all at once, but we can get a little taste of it by sincerely practicing sadhana bhakti, filling out our sadhana sheet. Takes us a little closer to a blissful world where people dance forever. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Shridevi Mataji said this morning about Bhajana Kriya that it means initiation, and I was also thinking, when would be the proper moment of taking initiation?
What would be the proper what?
The proper moment, like in Bhajana Kriya, probably in Utsahama, it's too early to...
No, well, the qualification of initiation probably mentions the nectar of instruction. One should be prepared to live in all kinds of inconvenient situations if he just gets the opportunity to associate with the devotees and chant Hare Krishna, perform devotional service. Then he says that one is ready for initiation. In other words, initiation, basically speaking, I'm willing to give up my false ego and identify myself as the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. That's why we get a change of names from whatever our name was before to a name which means Krishna or Krishna Dasi. Because that's who we identify with. And therefore, at least a willingness to surrender to the Krishna's instructions, follow them so that we become, we enter into our identity. We realize our identity is Krishna Das or Krishna Dasi. We're willing to go through the austerity and the inconvenience and the willingness to perform devotional service under the guidance of authorities, so that gradually we can become elevated to the spiritual consciousness. For instance, it says, Brahmacharya Guru Kule Vasandanta Guru Hitam Dasavanasanam Nicho Guru Gaurava Saurida. There are qualities for becoming Brahman. Brahmacharya means you're becoming Brahman, or Brahmacharini. You're becoming Brahman. So there's preliminary qualifications. Brahmacharya Guru Kule, that one should always be in a spiritual atmosphere. Vasandanta Guruhita, and control the senses by engaging them in devotional service. And one should be favorable towards the instructions, to the person giving the instructions. One should do them with a joyful attitude, and one should be fixed in those instructions. One should be willing to come to the platform of determination to follow, to practice following. And that way one becomes eligible to take initiation, to become sincerely on the path of Brahman realization. Be willing to work on the Madhyama Adhikari platform. Learn to love Krishna, serve him with love, cooperate with the devotees, help the innocent, and avoid the atheists. That's why initiation is there, to help us work on the Brahman platform, the liberated platform. Is that right?
So it's more like acting on the Nishta platform even if you're not there.
Yeah, otherwise how are we going to get there? We can't, even if you come to the Brahminical stage, still you have to act, eventually you have to act on the Madhyama-Adhikari platform to come to transcendence. I mean, there may be impersonal realization through impersonal meditation, but to actually come to transcendental life in Krishna consciousness, you have to act on the Madhyama platform. So that's what Prabhupada says in Nectar of Instruction. That's why one takes initiation. It's to practice working on the Madhyama Adhikari platform to come to Krishna consciousness. Of course, sometimes we give initiation quite liberally, with the hope that one will will gradually become elevated, Prabhupada says. but it doesn't always work like that. People should understand. We should understand why the person taking initiation should understand what the purpose of initiation is, and certainly the person giving initiation should understand. Otherwise, if we choose candidates for or one takes initiation out of sentiment or out of pressure or whatever else, it doesn't serve any purpose. One doesn't make any advancement towards realizing one's spiritual identity. Therefore, it just becomes a fashion, or whatever it becomes. Someone should at least understand what the purpose is and be willing to at least try to fulfill the purpose. Anything else? Hvala, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
lažje kot te, da šlo do tle, ne?
Ja, ne vem, če mislim, da bom sem prinesel sesalce, da so tukaj...
A doma to uporabljaš sesalce?
Da,
Tam sam potegneš, ko boš vsega.
Tako vreme, čudim.
No, vse se ne moti zdaj, ampak če boš ti nekaj že vidiš doma delo, sem ga dan daš, pa veš noš ekstra tle, pa sam ekstra se dela pot. Kaj še to ne boš ti boš čisto, če ti da boš naprej. Smo že probali drugo verjetno, da se ne dogaja.
Kako drugo verjetno?
Ja, da je kdo drug, da smo vzorili se spozorili, od kje drugje, pa veš, nisem navajen, da meni to ne posvoje, ker to je specifično dodaja zdaj, to ne moram dolgo znati, veš. Veš, ki ima, veš, kaj to, veš, ostalo neki kacava, veš, pa on plan neki, a veš, še kdo, pribavka. Tako da jaz mislim, da ne bo